Hi, folks. My name is Jim Jividen. I am a course instructor with organizational behavior. I have just finished 20 fluid ounces of Powerade Zero mixed berry flavor. Let's do this. This is a long form video for Chapter 6, Perception and Individual Decision Making for organizational behavior. This is the second chapter in the first competency. The first chapter is Chapter 5. It doesn't make a ton of sense that you're watching this video if you did not see the first video. So if you're here, my strong suggestion is you go back and watch that Chapter 5 video. At the very end of the Chapter 5 video, something I do is talk about the org behavior video library and why we're here and sort of how to think about it in the sweep of your overall study of this course. If you have yet to watch the end of that Chapter 5 video, strongly consider it. Short version, at the time of this recording, and I'm in the past, at the time of this recording, there's a new edition of the textbook that is about to roll out. And so the org behavior video library will need to be redone. Not so much for content. The content is largely the same, but for things like page numbers and other things have gotten creaky over the course of the years. There's some very creaky videos, the kind you don't take home to mother. Page numbers, course codes, my job title. Things change over the course of years. But if you're watching a video from, if you go further into the video library and you're watching a video that was made, 3 years ago, and you go, wait, is this video okay? Clearly, it's an older video. Look at that course code. It's fine. If I am still letting you see it in the video library, then it's fine in terms of the content. So don't sweat it. I promise. So over the next hour or so, what I'm going to do is talk about Chapter 6, which is a discussion of perception. We're going to define perception and explain the factors that influence it, explain attribution theory, and list the three determinants of attribution. I'm going to do that. I don't know that I'll talk about them in any real depth. I'm going to identify the shortcuts individuals use in making judgments about others, discuss rational model of decision making and contrast it with bounded rationality and intuition, explain common biases and errors, and then finally discuss utilitarianism. I hope to make it worth your academic dollar. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Jividen Talks About Organizational Behavior. Here we go. So, I'm aware that some of you are listening to me in audio only form, podcast form. You take the morning train, you work from 9 to 5, and then you take another home again, and so you are listening to me on your commute. I dig you, you're my audio people, and so I try to, as best I'm able, not assume that everyone can see the images on the screen. I try as best I can to not say things like, "Hey, look at that." But hey, look at that. Uh, so over 40s. Where are my over 40s at? Where are my over 40s at? You know who this is, over 40s, my fellow over 40s. This is clearly a tennis player. He's got a sweet 80s mullet. He's got a thick patch of masculine chest hair. He has a bandana. He had a romantic relationship with Barbara Streisand. He was married to Miss Brooke Shields. This, in fact, is this is Andre Agassi, who was an American tennis star in the 80s and 90s, a rival of Pete Sampras, if that helps. He had an ad campaign for a camera company. Cameras were items, instruments that took pictures, but were disconnected from phones. I know that's weird. He had an ad campaign for a camera company, the slogan for which was "Image is everything." And that's a good way to think about perception because it's everything. we define perception as a process by which individuals organize and interpret their sensory impressions in order to give meaning to their environment. This is a course about behavior, obviously, about your behavior, about the behavior of organizations, about the behavior of you inside organizations. Uh, and a bedrock principle of behavior is that it's not based on what happened, it's based on what you think happened. Behavior is based on perception and not reality. Um, and that's one reason why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. That's maybe a bridge too far. Here's a more accurate way to put that. I used to practice law. I'm still a lawyer. I just don't do it anymore. Many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, I was a lawyer. And something you learn super quick is that there's a vast difference between the credibility that juries think eyewitness testimony has and the actual likelihood that that testimony is the thing that happened in reality. There's distance between what I'm saying I saw and what actually happened, and that distance maybe is not fully appreciated, by jurors, making eyewitness testimony not as reliable as you'd like it to be. And that distance is caused by three factors. So here are the three factors that influence perception. They're the perceiver, the target, and the situation. Perceiver, target, situation. What are those? The three factors that influence perception. I see an event. I'm the perceiver. I saw the event. I'm thinking about the event. I'm perceiving the event, and what I see, what I take in, is influenced by who I am, my attitudes, my personalities, my past experiences, my expectations. I see the things that I'm predisposed to see, and I ignore the things that I'm predisposed to ignore. That you can probably think in your own life. There are things that you are more likely to spot than others, and particularly, again, hey, over 40s, probably as you have reached the over 40 stage of life in which I'm a part, you notice there are things you just flat miss. Hey, why didn't I see that was there? Lots of reasons. One of them is you're an over 40 like me. The target is the thing you're perceiving. It's the thing that happened. It's the event. It's the thing you're looking at. And your relationship to that target alters the way that you perceive it. We are drawn to certain things more than others. Situation is everything else. It's the context. It's everything else that might be distracting. Is it dark? Is it raining? Are you far away? Those are all situational factors that might influence perception. Uh, we can. I'm going to try to articulate this without getting fired. So uh, we can probably think of in recent years kind of a large scale events where the testimony, the accounts of the people in those events seemingly differed from video evidence once the video evidence has been revealed. Fair, right? um, uh, and the first instinct is to say, well, the people who are giving the testimony are lying. And to be fair, sometimes they are. But the other way to think about that, the other element of that is the way we view situations is really colored by these three factors. The thing, the kind of person you are, and the experiences that you've had. You can only see through the eyes that are in your head, and you can only the types of things you are more likely as opposed to less likely to see, and the context involved. Perceiver, target, situation. Three factors that influence perception. There's a concept called attribution theory in chapter 6. When we observe behavior, we try to determine if it was internally or externally caused. It's unlikely you're going to see language like disposition and situation on the exam. If you did, dispositional attribution is internal. Situational attribution is external. You may see the words intrinsic and extrinsic on the exam. Intrinsic and extrinsic are the same as internal, and external is inside and outside. Intrinsic is inside you, extrinsic is outside you. Uh, it, So we're thinking about behavior. Why did someone do the thing they did? And we got really two options here. People did the thing they did either because it's part of who they are. There's a character trait on the inside of them, and that character trait causes them to do the things they do. Um, or people are motivated by things that are outside of them. Hey, something outside of a person's control caused them to do what they did. Uh, and one of the ways that we sort of try to in our own mind filter out, which is more likely to have happened. Is it more likely that someone's behavior was internally caused or externally caused? Is we look to see if something fit a pattern or broke a pattern. So I, you know, let's say I'm a teacher, and I've got a student and this is the pattern of the student's grades. Um, C minus. And student comes to me with an explanation. Um, you know, grandmother died, dog ate my homework, car broke down, whatever it is, right? My inclination is to believe the student. My inclination is to think because it broke the pattern, I know this student not to be fundamentally a poor student. I think of the student as a good student, and now something has broken that pattern, and so my thought is probably something external to the student, something situational, extrinsic to the student happened to cause the student to get this C minus. On the other hand, if the student's grades are C, 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 C minus, and the student says, grandma, dog, father pregnant, whatever it is, my thought is, probably not. I have a good sense, I think, of who this student is, and whether this is the level of effort or the level of academic inclination or whatever it is. There's a pattern of C's, and so this C minus really fits that pattern as opposed to breaks it. And that's really a way we kind of shorthand if we think someone's behavior is caused internally or externally. There are three things called determinants of attribution. I said a few minutes ago I'd list them. I don't know that it's useful really to discuss them so much. But the three determinants of attribution are distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. Distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. What are those? Those are the three determinants of attribution: distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. But really, what we're looking for is that pattern. If something is in a pattern, we largely think that it is internal, and if it breaks the pattern, largely we think that it's external. There are a couple of related concepts to this: the fundamental attribution error and self-serving bias. So, the fundamental attribution error is this: when we think about other people, so not ourselves. For this concept, we're only thinking about other people, and we're trying to determine whether their behavior is internally caused or externally caused. When we think about other people, we overly estimate the degree to which internal factors are motivating that behavior. And we underestimate the degree to which external factors motivate that behavior. You are meeting someone for the first time and they're late. Your thought is likely to be, you know what? That's the kind of person this is. This person is selfish. This person is careless. This is the kind of person who doesn't value other people's time, internal. As opposed to saying, I wonder what happened to this person to cause them to be late, external. When we think about other people, not ourselves, other people, we overestimate internal factors. We underestimate external factors. I mean, it makes sense, right? We see people's lives in snapshots and not documentaries. We see behavior just as it is, as opposed to everything that led up to it. So, you and I have an encounter. If it's a bad encounter, particularly, you're likely to say, oh, "That's who Jividan is," because that's all you know about me. You know that moment. You don't know the entire movie of my life, or at least the movie of the last 11 minutes of my life, or whatever amount of time might be relevant, where you could see what led up to my acting in that way. Uh, and so when we think about other people, that's the mistake we commonly make. It's called the fundamental attribution error. On the other hand, um, when we're thinking about ourselves, we tend to have what's called self-serving bias. Self-serving bias is this: when we succeed at something, we tend to credit ourselves. We tend to credit internal reasons for that success. Why did I succeed? I'm smart. I'm hardworking. I'm the kind of person who succeeds. And when we fail at something, we tend to blame others. We tend to blame external reasons for that failure. Why did I fail? The sun got in my eyes. The professor didn't like me. That kind of thing. This is the first sports metaphor of the day, maybe the last. I don't know. I'm a quarterback. I have self-serving bias. I throw a touchdown pass. Why did I throw that touchdown pass? Because I'm that dude, right? I'm that dude. I belong on every cereal box. Have you seen my arm? Seriously, it is touched by Thor. This thing. I'm that dude. And if I throw an interception, why did I throw an interception? Man, because everybody else is terrible. My line can't block, and the receiver ran the wrong route. And that play the coach called, terrible. And it was probably pass interference, and it's raining, and the sun got in my eyes, and, all manner of things. So that fundamental attribution error and self-serving bias. We're going to talk about a few shortcuts that we make when trying to make judgments about other people. Selective perception is the tendency we have to selectively interpret what we see on the basis of our own interests. Here's a good example. Have you ever been in this conversation? Hey, you know what? I keep seeing my car everywhere. I don't mean your actual car, because dude, call the cops. But I mean the make and model of your car, right? The year, the make, the model. Hey, I swear to God, I saw my car like 3 times yesterday. Weird, right? Not that weird. Your car takes up a pretty large space in your brain, right? When if you could kind of do a pie chart of everything that exists in your brain, your car, because it's your car, takes up a fairly significant amount of that space, and so you're likely to see the things that you're likely to see. I'm not going to see your car that many times. We have different cars, by the way, which is good for you. My car is 11 years old. That's selective perception. This is going to take a dark turn. Come with me. This is sort of the nature. This is kind of the talk radio confessional nature, what we try to do here with the long form org behavior videos. If you happened to watch the biographical video I did of myself, you don't need to. I talk a little bit about my parents, specifically my father. My father passed away 8 years ago now at the time that I am making this recording. He was young. He was 62, and my over 40s will think of that as young. It was surprising, and particularly in the say year and a half following, but still now a little bit, I'd see him, right? I don't mean literally I'd see him. Like, I think there he is. He didn't die. He's pulling a scam on us. But more of I'd see men of his demographic who looked like him. Look, there's I think I saw my dad like twice this week. He was at the grocery store. He was weirdly riding a motorcycle. I. I'm not, of course. It isn't that he has one of those faces that everybody has. It's that he occupies a large portion of my brain, even though I'm not necessarily aware of it all the time. It's just, the nature of his existence in my head, that it makes me more likely to, see my car than see other cars. So selective perception. Halo effect is this: we draw an impression about individuals on the basis of a single characteristic. Um, uh, a good example is attractiveness, right? Um, so that's the single characteristic, and based on that single characteristic, we decide to assume a whole host of other things about them. Um, so good-looking pilots or waiters, waitresses are thought of as better at their jobs than pilots, waiters, waitresses who are less conventionally attractive. They've done studies with college professors. They take two actors, one attractive and one less so, and give them scripts and have them do like a 4 hour seminar for college students, and then the college students rate, their experience. Well, the attractive professor is smart, insightful, really interested in his subject, and really able to work with the students in an effective way. And the less attractive actor is overbearing, a little bit condescending, maybe a little bit intellectually lazy. Right? It's exactly the same script. They're exactly giving exactly the same performance, but the nature of that attractiveness causes us to view them, view their other qualities in ways that they wouldn't necessarily have. There's a study about the facial symmetry of National Football League starting quarterbacks, and facial symmetry, the degree to which National Football League starting quarterbacks have symmetrical, which are generally considered to be attractive, symmetrical facial features, significantly outstrips everybody else. Not just the general public. They're obviously more athletic than the general public, but I mean the general public of their age group, fellow athletes, backup quarterbacks in the National Football League don't have symmetrical faces to the extent that starting quarterbacks do. I mean, it's Darwinian, man. How these starting quarterbacks are so pretty to look at. Well, why is that? I mean, halo effect. So you think about how it is that someone winds up a starting quarterback in the NFL. A coach years and years and years before had to look at a group of 7-year-old children and say this is the one who should be in charge, because that's if you are unfamiliar with the role of quarterback in the NFL, the quarterback's in charge. The quarterback is the leader of the offense and considered the leader of the football team. So how do we determine that one kid is going to have leadership qualities as opposed to another 7, 8-year-old? It could be they take the one with a more symmetrical face. That's the idea of the halo effect, right? He just seems like a born leader, seems like a natural leader, right? Seems like he's going to be the naturally charismatic one, and it could just be the proportion of his nose to his mouth. Finally, at least for this slide, is self-fulfilling prophecy. If you ever see the phrase Pygmalion effect, that's also a reference to self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a situation where a person inaccurately perceives a second person, not Persian. That's not how you pronounce person. And the resulting expectation cause the second person to behave in ways consistent with the original perception. Self-fulfilling prophecy is a prediction you make, and then you make it come true yourself. You do it subconsciously, and it's a bad thing. Usually, not always. Usually. Let me give you an example. So, elementary school study, right? The beginning of an elementary school year, they take a group of kids. So the kids are all exactly the same. There's no differentiating them. They take a group of kids and they cut them in half, and they tell the teachers. Group A, this is the smart group. They're the group that's tested well. They're the overachieving group, right? And they take another group, Group B, and say, these are the normals. They didn't test as well. They're just regular 8-year-olds or however old the kids were. They're lying, right? They're making that up. The kids are exactly the same, but the teachers don't know that. The teachers think, okay, this is the gifted group and this is the normal group, and then they have a school year. And at the end of the school year, might have been a semester. At the end of the school year, they test the kids. The group A, the group that the teachers thought was the gifted group, they now test better than the group the teachers thought was the normal group. The fake gifted group is now the real gifted group, and the fake normal group is now their real normal group. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We can live up or down to our expectations. The elementary school teachers thought of this group of students in one way, and that's the way they treated them. They expected them to be the gifted group, and so they became the gifted group. They expected them to be the kind of normal group, and they became the normal group. We conform our behavior to the expectations that others have of us, even when those expectations are based on nothing. They're illusions. They're false. Self-fulfilling prophecy. The last one of these I'm going to talk about is called the contrast effect. So, contrast effect is this. We don't really evaluate things on their own merits. We think we do. We always think they do. Do you like this car? Do you like this person? And, we use our own critical judgment in evaluating whether we do or not. In truth, we often evaluate things in comparison to other things, in context with other things, in contrast with other things, even though we don't know we're doing it. It's called the contrast effect. There's an experiment by a behavioral economist named Dan Ariely. That's Ariely. He's good if you were interested in looking up his stuff. And it came from a couple of different ads to The Economist magazine. This again, audio only people. Audio only people, you are killing the game. Love you. Love you. But I'm going to talk about things that you can't see. And so what we're showing here on the screen are two advertisements to The Economist magazine. I want you to look at the one on the left. So the one on the left offers two ways to subscribe to The Economist. One is internet only, right? Economist.com only. And the other is print plus web. It's internet plus the print edition. And the internet only is about half the cost of print plus internet, right? So those are your options. And then you look at the right, and the thing hopefully that you notice on the right is they've added a third option. And it's a weird option. It's a weird option because remember what our first two options are internet only and then print plus internet. So the third option they added is print only. But what's the weird thing? Um, this is the point where if we were in class, you'd be raising your hand because you know the answer to this question. The weird thing is print only costs exactly the same as print plus internet. They're both double internet only. So print is 125 bucks, or you can get print plus internet for 125 bucks. Why? One, who would ever choose print only when you can get print plus internet for exactly the same amount of money? I mean, right? Seems like a weird decision. And kind of more interestingly, why is this an ad? I mean, the Economist knows no one's going to choose that option, right? So what's the point of that option? I'll tell you what the point is. It's this. So now what I'd like you to do is look at the one on the right side first. I know that's counterintuitive, but go with me. So this is our first ad, right? The one on the right side. When you have that first ad, what you see is people take the cheaper option. About 2/3. People take the cheaper option. They're going to take online only as opposed to online plus print. It costs half as much. Who cares about print? We don't care about your old fangled print ways, your magazines and your newspapers, and your As the World Turns, old man. On online only wins. It costs half as much. But now look at the one on the left. Yeah. So what probably draws you in first is the zero. No one bought the print only, right? Why would you? It costs the exact same as print plus online. Nobody bought it. But look at the other two. Overwhelmingly, overwhelmingly, people bought the high dollar item. People bought print plus online. Look how many of those high dollar subscriptions they sold in the that ad on the left, that second ad, the one with the third option, the print only option. That's the contrast effect. Because when it's just the two, when it's just the low dollar option and the high dollar option, you pick the cheaper one, whatever. But when you add that third option, what you do, even though you don't know you're doing it, is you contrast print only and print plus online. Print plus online is clearly a better deal than print only because they're the same amount of money. And so you're kind of moved subconsciously, your preferences are moved to picking that print plus online. Imagine that. Imagine that, good people. Think of the ramifications. Do you have if you were a young person and you have a twin, what you might want to do is fatten them up, or maybe give them a little scar. What you want, is kind of like a version of you, the exact same thing, but not as good. It's going to make you look more attractive. You're in a job interview situation. You're in a queue, so you can see the other people in the room, and they're walking into a room to go to job interviews. Who do you want to go before you? You want someone who's just like you, but not as good, right? Roughly the same age, same demographic. Maybe someone who went to WGU. That'd be great. Really same kind of thing, same kind of background, same kind of resume, but just not as good. That's who you want right in front of you. That's who you want right in front of you. It's going to make you look more attractive. They're the print version. You're print plus online, right? Um, uh, I am a married person, but not all of you are married people. Some of you are singles, happy-go-lucky lucky singles. You're out there moving, shaking, wheeling, dealing. Um, you're familiar with the concept of having a wingman, right? Wing woman. You go to some sort of a club gathering place, sort of want someone with you. Who do you want next to you? You want kind of a little bit uglier version of you, right? You, but not as good, right? That's who you want. You want the print only version of you. You want to be print plus web, and you want the print only version of you. That's a way to think about how to make the contrast effect work for you. And you should also think about if the contrast effect is being used on you, right? Menus, or maybe a list of options at a car mechanic. Those are ways to think about. Hey, why is this option there? Is this option there to force me over into picking this option? And if you're ever in the position to, make your own version of that for a business that you're a part of, if you're selling something or giving advice about selling something, consider the contrast effect. Can we find an option that essentially is going to force people into making more attractive the option we want them to choose? Okay. There are a couple of ways to make decisions that you want to be familiar with. There's a thorough way to make decisions. The thorough way to make decisions is called the rational decision making model. You're going to look at a lot of information in the rational decision making model. There's a shorthanded way to make decisions, a simple way to make decisions. It's called bounded rationality. I want you to remember that word bounded if you have to remember which one of these is which, because the word bounded implies what? Binding, right? Confinement, limiting. In bounded rationality, you're going to limit how much stuff you're going to look at. And that's the distinction I'm going to want you to keep in mind: rational decision making versus bounded rationality. Rational decision making model is a very thorough way to make decisions. You're going to look at a lot of options, really as many options as you can, and then you're going to look to make the perfect choice. You're going to look out of all of those options to pick the one that's best for you. If I'm buying a car using the rational decision making model, I'm going to every dealership in 3 counties, right? I'm looking at every make, every model, every payment plan I can get my hands on. It's a lot of information. And I'm going to keep kind of looking, kind of battling them off against each other until I find the very best car for me. This car, 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 until I get to the one that wins. Most of us, most of the time, don't do that. I mean, there are lots of reasons for that. We don't have perfect information. It takes a really long time to go through all that information. we're not necessarily great decision makers when we have a lot of options. Back in my day, because I'm an old. You know how many options there were for ketchup? I mean, there were two, right? There was Hunt's, there was Heinz, there was Del Monte. Um, that was it. You go to the grocery store, there were three bottles of ketchup sitting in front of you, and you're going to pick one of them. Go look at the ketchup now, or the barbecue sauce, or it's, it's a dozen different brands and three dozen different flavors. It's mesquite and chipotle and gluten free and low sodium and organic and no GMOs and um, uh, and it's a lot of choices. And we're not great about saying option two is better than option 13. We're pretty good at option two is better than option three. So we use bounded rationality a lot of the time. It's a shorthand. It's a simplified way of making decisions. We're not going to look at all that information. We're really going to limit how much information we're going to look at. I'm going to one dealership, probably the one closest to my house. Um, and I'm not really looking for the perfect car. I'm going to buy the first car that comes along that is satisfactory. And that's called satisficing a decision when you make the satisfactory choice. I'm going to satisfice this thing. I'm going to take the satisfactory car, the sufficient car, the reasonable car, the good enough car. I'm going to take the good enough car. I find a car. It works okay, right? Make, model, price, payment plan, mileage, aesthetically, functionally. You know what? This is pretty good. Is it the best? I mean, probably not. Probably I could spend 6 more weeks and find, three or four cars that make more sense for me. But I don't want to spend 6 more weeks. I got to do other things with my life. I'm moving on. This car's fine. It's sufficient. It's satisfactory. It's good enough. That's bounded rationality. And that's the distinction that I want you to hold in your head. Intuition, probably for purposes of this class, is less important. But I think we tend in sort of popular culture, our conventional understanding of intuition, gut instinct, can be a little misleading. I think most of us think of intuition like it's kind of magic, right? I just, had or extra sensory, I out of nowhere, I had this thought. The thought turned out to be true. My gut instinct told me something. Intuition is really better perceived as kind of distilled experience. Um, your brain is processing information even when you're not aware of it. And as kind of a shorthand rule of thumb, when you should use your intuition is when you are involved with something with which you have a lot of experience. Example. So they've talked to nurses or who say, the chart said this and the doctor said this, but something didn't quite feel right. I went with my gut, and my gut turned out to save that person's life. Or, firefighters. I was in this in an active fire, and I just something just didn't seem right, and I told everyone to get out of the building, and a second later the roof caved in. The it's not really magic. It's experience. It's when you've got 10,000 hours doing something. When you've got 10,000 hours of practice in a field, you are constantly accumulating data. You are filing experiences away. Every interaction is falling into a place in your head, even if you're not consciously aware of it. It's there in some form. And there are times when you can what seems like magic is really just your brain, like a computer, kind of scrolling through all of those experiences to fit the thing you're in into a box, into a file with one of those other experiences. I've been at the time of this recording. I've been teaching for 20 years, and teaching heavy. And by that I mean, there are some university professors who have been teaching a long time. They don't really teach that much. They have a couple of classes a term. They do mainly more research. They have grad assistants who do most of their teaching for them. My situation has been I've been teaching heavy. I was a high school teacher. That's teaching heavy. The traditional college at which I worked was one where I had very heavy class loads, a lot of classes, a lot of students. And here at WGU, you're right now, at the time of this recording, the course that you're enrolled in, organizational behavior, has about 1,800 active students. Probably you in the future, probably there's more. And as soon as you graduate, someone's going to take your desk. It'll happen the second you leave it. That's just how it goes. So there's a lot of interactions, is my point. There's a lot of encounters, encounter after encounter after encounter after encounter. If I were a pilot and we were logging my flight time, I've been in this plane. I have been in these teaching streets for a long time, and so there aren't too many student interactions that surprise me. That and when something doesn't feel right, when I leave an interaction, even if it's a simple one, and I think, man, that was weird. Um, I need to listen to myself. I have had a couple of circumstances where I have left student interactions that, even though on its face were, they were fine, not great, but whatever, and thought in the immediate aftermath of that interaction, I mean, that was unusual, and it turned out to be really unusual. Um, eh, in threatening ways, in ways that one could not have anticipated just based on the face of the interaction, except I kind of did. And it's because, I've been doing this for a long time. So we're going to talk about a few biases and errors. And you can see them on the screen, except for my audio only people who are still killing the game, by the way. So, uh, overconfidence bias is this. We we tend to be overconfident about our abilities. We tend to be overconfident about everybody's abilities. Um, if you ask, you go to a college classroom, and you ask students to rank themselves. Are they above average, average, below average? Um, Too many of them will say above average, right? If 80% of the students in the room think they're above average, then what does the word average mean? Right? We tend to think we're better at things than we are, and there's a concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect that articulates that it's sort of the least capable people have the greatest overestimation of their own abilities. They know so little that they can't grasp how little they know. Hard to win an argument with a smart person. Damn near impossible to win an argument with a stupid person, right? They don't know enough to know when they're losing. It's like it's playing chess against a person who does not know how to play chess. Um, they don't know when it's checkmate. Overconfidence bias. We're all kind of overconfident a lot of the time. The least among us are the most overconfident. Anchoring bias is a tendency to fixate on initial information. Um, we get an idea in our head, and we become anchored to that idea. And even when new stuff comes in, it's hard for us to kick away our initial impression. We become anchored to ideas. Um, uh, it's why there are stickers on cars that you in the dealership, right? You're not going to pay sticker price. Why is the sticker on the car? The stickers on the car to anchor the negotiation. If it says 20, you're not going to offer 12, right? Because it says 20. You're going to offer somewhere a little bit below 20. I'm going to offer 17, and you're going to offer 19, and we're going to meet at 18.5, or whatever it is. But I'm not going to offer 9, because the negotiation is anchored at 20, because that's the initial price. Um, think about, you may have you may have a job offer where your prospective employer suggests to you or asks you what your sort of interested salary range is. Um, and what we tend to do is go to round numbers. So you're going to say, $50,000, let's say, or whatever the number is. But we tend to go to round numbers. Let's say if you say as a range, I want $50,000 to $60,000, right? What's the salary I want? 50 to 60. Your boss comes back with 55, and there you are, right in the middle. Because but there's a way you can use the anchoring effect to your benefit. So as opposed to saying 50 to 60, say 55 to 60. If you say 55 to 60, um, the boss, you haven't changed the top end, right? Not like you're saying $1 million. You're still just saying 60, like you were a second ago. But now the anchor is changed. So if you say 55 to 60, the boss isn't coming back with, okay, 55. The boss is probably coming back with, 57, somewhere in between because of the anchor. You're the same person, and you haven't radically shifted what your expectation of your worth is, but you've changed the anchor. You just move the anchor up a little bit from 50 to 55, and it forces the boss to move their expectations, and you're likely to get a couple of more bucks out of that. Confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out information that reaffirms our past choices, and to discount information that contradicts past judgments. Um, we look for things that we want to hear, and we sort of ignore things that we don't want to see, and some of that is intentional. I'm only going to watch this news source. I'm only going to follow this. I'm only going to read this type of newspaper. I'm only going to listen to follow. I'm only going to follow this Twitter feed, right? I'm only going to expose myself to information that confirms what I already believe about the world, as opposed to challenging my own ideas. It's hard to challenge the things that exist in your head. I'm just going to expose myself to things that confirm what I already believe. And sometimes it's entirely subconscious. Um, if I come home from the grocery store and I say, I mean, why am I always stuck in the slow lane? I am always stuck behind the person who's trying to write a check, or who can't use the credit card machine, or who has to get a price check, or who forgot to get chunky monkey or whatever it is. I'm always behind. I'm always in the slow lane. That's unlikely, right? It's unlikely that's true, that I'm just cursed in the grocery store. Uh, so why do I think that? I think it because um, I'm only remembering the times when I'm in the slow lane. Um, the times I'm at the grocery store where it's fine, I don't ever think about them again. They don't, as pieces of evidence, they don't weigh on me in any way. They just fly immediately out of my brain. Um, what I remember is, the times when I'm behind the person whose kid is screaming, and they're chatting too long with the clerk, and I'm just standing there, tapping my foot at 8:20 on a Saturday morning, just trying to buy my the mixed berry Powerade Zero in 20 fluid ounces. Um, it's confirmation bias. The evidence that we take in is the evidence we're looking to take in. I'm really just looking for evidence that confirms my impression that I'm in the slow lane. The evidence that disconfirms it, it doesn't stick. It just flies right out of my head. Availability bias. We base our judgment on information that's the most readily available to us. We can overweight our own experience. if your experience with something there's a here comes a study that says X, 80% of people, think this or do this, and you go, not me, and because not me, then that study is bogus. Well, no, you know, the information of your own life is more readily available to you, but that doesn't mean that it is more powerful than a larger body of evidence. A good example of availability bias is called the recency effect, which is we tend to remember evidence that's just happened. Because it's the most available to us. It just happened. It can cause us to think that things like hot streaks are real. Um, not to do too much sports here, but if you have any sense about sports, you either believe or certainly have heard people talk about hot streaks. The basketball shooter is in a hot streak. The baseball batter is in a hot streak. I just can't miss, man. Bang, 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 bang. I'm in a hot streak. I have momentum. Those things are largely nonsense. We overly weight the information that we've just seen. A way to think about that is flipping a coin. So, if I'm going to flip a quarter, 500 times in a row, within that 500 time period, I'm going to go on some hot streaks, right? I'm going to flip heads 13 consecutive times at one point. That that's just how math works. At the end of those 500 flips, it'll be roughly 50-50 because it's a coin and I'm flipping it. Um, but in the middle of that 13 times in a row, we might say, man, heads have the momentum. Heads are really locked in. Heads are on fire. Look how heads can't miss, which is dumb, right? But it's just sometimes you go on these runs because that's just how math works. At the end, it's going to even out. It's great if you get hot at the roulette wheel. Eventually, the casino is going to take all of your money unless you leave. So, leave. Escalation of commitment is sometimes we increase commitment to kind of double down on an already a bad decision. It's the phrase, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you've ever had this conversation, look, I can't break up with that person because if I do, it would be like I've wasted the last 3 years of my life. That's escalation of commitment because those 3 years are gone, right? There's literally nothing you can do about those 3 years. All you can control are the next 3 years. But if your thought process is, I'm already this committed, so I've just got to keep committing. That's this bias that we're talking about. We tend to keep going even long after we should leave. We do it with jobs. We do it with relationships. Long after we should have understood the idea of sunk costs. Look, sometimes you just have to cut your losses and go. We tend to think I can keep digging my way out of this. If I just keep digging my way out of this, eventually I'm going to get whole again. And we tend to do that, to a greater extent than the evidence would warrant that we should do it. Here's our last thing for Chapter 6. It's utilitarianism. Um, Utilitarianism is a belief system based on outcomes. And the outcome that utilitarians believe in is one where the right thing to do is whatever causes the greatest good for the greatest number. The greatest good for the greatest number. You ask a utilitarian, is it morally acceptable to kill an innocent person if you could save the lives of 1,000 innocent people? And the utilitarian says, yeah, yeah. Why? Because 1,000's more than one. And morality is about whatever produces the greatest good for the greatest number. Uh, there aren't absolute principles against killing. There aren't absolute principles against anything. What we're looking for is the to add the most benefit to existence. It's like a giant pro-con list. We want the best possible outcomes, the best possible consequences. We want to produce the greatest amount of good and the least amount of bad. And that's the idea here of utilitarianism. Um, and we're done. So look, man, I hope you found some element of this to be useful. Uh, in thinking about chapter 6. Um, I appreciate your time here, and my sort of concluding thought is, um, your and this can be a challenging thing for an adult to say to other adults. I recognize, but just stay with me. You're smart and you're good, and you deserve good things, and I believe in you, and you're going to pass this course. I've been teaching a long time. I've been teaching this course a long time. I've got lots of hours in the plane, and so I know how this works. And just the fact that you have made it here to this point in the video and not turned it off illustrates a level of commitment to your studies that is in line with the level of commitment for students who have gone before you and who have been successful, who have successfully passed this class and the next class and the class after that, and walked across the stage, either literally or figuratively. Um, you're smart and you're good, and you deserve good things, and I appreciate you. Thanks very much. Look, probably there's another video for Chapter 7. Could be that I made it a month from now. Could be I made it 3 years from now. But probably one exists, and if you're able to see it, it's might be worth your time. Thanks very much, folks. I have to find the hotkey here and say goodbye. You go be the ball. Go have a good evening or day or weekend or Wednesday afternoon or July or October or whenever it is, and I'll catch you around the way. Thanks, folks.